Good morning and welcome to the Sickle Cell Society's 42nd AGM, presenting our 2020-2021 results for the year ending the 31st of March. I am Kye Gbangbola, Chair of the Sickle Cell Society, and our panel for the AGM consists of our Chief Executive, John James OBE, and our President, Michael Parker CBE, as well as myself. This is our second virtual AGM, and it is being recorded. The link to watch again or share will be on the Sickle Cell Society's website at www.sicklecellsociety.org. Our AGM will be complete by 12:35. Anybody that's not speaking, please ensure that your microphone is muted. Thank you. So, welcome all guests of the Society, stakeholders, members, Sickle Cell Warriors, support group representatives, families, donors, Society, staff, volunteers and supporters. I welcome you to this, our 42nd annual general meeting. I'm pleased our audience includes people from Scotland, Ireland, the US, Australia, the Caribbean, Ghana, Nigeria, etc. And I would also like to extend a very welcome to our MPs as they join us today. And I'd also like to thank them for their dedication to the cause of improving the lives of people living with sickle cell as elected officers of the Sickle Cell and Thalassemia All-Party Parliamentary Group. So, thank you. On behalf of the Sickle Cell Society, we're so pleased to have your support and commitment. I would also like to thank everyone for registering and signing in, because of course, you are all welcome. As the agenda for this meeting states, we will conclude with a Q&A, questions and answers, after which we'll call the 42nd AGM to a close, and then we will have an opportunity to present the Emmanuel Amuta Award for Poetry. And after that, we will close with a vote of thanks. The Q&A consists of pre-submitted questions strictly about the annual report presented and our performance in the 2020-2021 financial year. You can also ask questions in the chat. We'll try to answer as many questions as possible. And don't be like me, if you do have a phone during that period of Q&A, please feel free to switch it off. This year, we meet again virtually as a safe way of conducting the AGM on account of the ongoing high coronavirus infection rates. We've come through first, second, third, and even fourth waves of COVID-19. Deaths through poor healthcare is an ongoing concern for people living with sickle cell. Various media have shone a spotlight on failures and suboptimal care. The investigations for these failures are ongoing. Deaths such as these are heartache and pain for those friends and family left to live with the grief and loss of people so full of promise. I would highlight sickle cell has always typified wider equality concerns in healthcare with respect to ethnicity. Let's just take a look at the data. Our sickle cell warriors are 4 times at greater risk of COVID-19 hospitalisation and 3 times greater risk of COVID-19 death. And this is according to Public Health England's electronic health records. PHE data on the impact of COVID-19 on Black communities and Health Foundation Unequal Impacts report shows that Black communities as a whole are far more likely to die from COVID than their white counterparts. The Marmot Report 2010 and the Aitchison Report, that report before that in 1980, each report steady and progressive health inequality that has actually continued since 1948. Thanks for that person switching off their mic. Now, all of these reports, Marmot, Aitchison, Black, all of them gave recommendations for levelling up. But the problems continue to persist. Our plea to the NHS and its new Race and Health Observatory is it's about tackling health inequality that goes against all principles of social injustice. Sickle cell should be in the front line of NHS change as a visible and enduring legacy of awareness, understanding and caring of Black lives. And we at the Society are always happy to engage with you in policy development going forward. And of course, the Society is only too aware there are increasing numbers of white people with sickle cell, but the fact remains, demand for care keeps growing. My friends and our politicians, those who jump up and write new law in seconds to avert a football super league, we implore you to make the rhetoric of equality a reality, street by street, company by company, person by person, to secure cultures that deliver equality at every level of our society. During the pandemic, the Society has continued to provide services throughout. Full credit to our staff team and executive. A lot of attention needed to be paid to just staying afloat, keeping teams motivated and maintaining service standards. This is gritty and hard.
This is your what? Give these details safe and secret.
James OBE, our chief executive, and our staff and volunteers doing a great job. And I offer my applause, absolute appreciation. Thank you again to that person that muted. Now, we show a strong performance at the Sickle Cell Society to the end of March 21, but it comes with a caveat, and it includes emergency grant and money secured for the refurbishment of the Society's office. The office works are now virtually complete, but throughout we seamlessly continued providing service as usual. I emphasise all the funding for the office work was ring-fence grant funded for the specific capital costs. No funds were diverted from monies to deliver our services. Works will be completed on budget despite programme delays on account of difficulties obtaining materials. We are extremely grateful that our staff, volunteers and visitors have a safer and indeed a better working environment in which to conduct the Society's work. But we must continue to operate with care as we remain in troubling times. Any of you that are good with social media, please be aware. Anyone can tweet, as you can see on slide 2, and they can do so on hashtag SCSAGM21. That's hashtag SCSAGM21. I've now completed our welcome, and I now officially will start our AGM, Annual General Meeting. The AGM. Notice of the meeting. The AGM convening notice had been circulated amongst members by letter and email and posted on the Society's website on the 12th of August 2021. We're on slide 3. Your packs include the agenda, minutes of the 41st AGM, the 2020-21 Impact Report, and the 2021 Management Accounts. As we begin the AGM, I would like to take this opportunity to thank PFK Littlejohn for their independent financial audit of our accounts and their audit management letter. I would also like to take apologies, and the apologies that have been received come from Michelle Salter, our Vice Chair and Treasurer, and Ganesh Sathyamurthy, one of our Sickle Cell trustees. There are no resolutions this year for the Chair to put to you, our members. And so moving on to board member recruitment, let me reassure you, we have many interesting and caring people associated with the Society, and we have always been blessed with committed people that volunteer and give their time free of charge away from their families and away from their workplaces in the selfless pursuit of supporting a great community of 15,000 people in the UK with the lifelong genetic condition that is sickle cell disorder. There are a further 380,000 people with sickle cell trait. The original highly successful gene mutation. And I want everybody to be muted so they can hear this, okay? There are a further 380,000 people with sickle cell trait. And it is, as I said, the highly successful original gene mutation that affords a degree of protection from malaria. Not immunity, mind, but protection. As we see, the COVID vaccination is meant to provide, but the gene for trait is au naturel. However, when it pairs up in a homozygous form, it has debilitating consequences, being sickle cell disorder. Now, some of our board of trustees are themselves living with the condition, doing hard work in fundraising and directing the Society. This year, we have no new trustees to introduce, but a couple of fantastic ones to say farewell to. Phillip, Black business entrepreneur extraordinaire, a man who flies with dragons and got us, the Society, mentioned in his successful pitch on the BBC's Dragon's Den. He has been the stalwart of the Society's children's holiday these past 6 years, and he's one of our youngest and ablest trustees, and will go on to better and better things, and with whom we have made a lifelong friend. And we are also extremely sorry to lose Joy Adeyemo, another young high flyer destined for great things. During the course of the year, in the usual way, we will advertise to recruit new trustees. So I'd like you to keep an eye on our website, should you be interested. If we could take the next slide, please, which looks at last year's 41st AGM. Please, would you take out your minutes? Let's go through them to see if they accurately reflect last year's AGM. If you could please open at page 1, which has welcomes and introduction. Please, any comments in relation to material accuracy at page 1. Page 2, which has minutes of the AGM 20th of July 2019. Any comments in relation to material accuracy? And page 3, which has appointment of auditors and conclusion. There being no comments, The minutes are adopted as a true and accurate record of our 41st AGM held virtually on the 14th of September 2020. Now, there are no matters arising, so if we could move to the next slide, which is the annual report of the Board of Trustees. Turning to the document, report and financial statements in your pack. Let me allow you a second to just pick that up as I scan the field for anybody with their hands up. Good. Now, anyone that wants to see how the Society is organised can easily do so. Allow me to quickly take you through. At the opening page, it's great to see the contents. These help guide you through the report. At pages 1, 2 and 3, you can see all the folk directly involved in the Society's activities, our President, illustrious patrons, Board of Trustees, staff, and these pages move into our organisational profile and our medical and scientific advisors. In the Trustee Report, and I'm now looking at page 4, this offers details and insight on the organisation's activities in the past year in meeting our mission. And our mission is to assist and enable people with sickle cell disorder to realise their full potential. The Trustee Report begins with explaining sickle cell disorder as a condition, after which you can see a schedule of the Society's key strategic objectives. Drawing attention now to pages 6 and 7, you will see the joint statement of the Chair and Chief Executive. Please be aware, as I've said before, it has been a challenging financial year in which we stayed within a deficit controlled budget. But the outturn is a solid surplus of £184,000 to the end of March 2021. As stated earlier, the strong performance comes with a caveat, as it includes emergency grants and grants secured for the refurbishment of the Society's office. Though we are navigating turbulent water, we all hope to arrive at a new normal soon. In the meantime, we work hard to continue making consecutive years of surpluses. Nevertheless, we never forget the perilous times, and we must tread with extreme care. 2020-21 income stands at just below £790,000, which is nearly £36,000 higher than the Society's previous highest ever income results. There will be more detail on the finances shortly from our President, Michael Parker, CBE, in the Treasurer's Report. But for my part, on behalf of the Board, may I thank the staff and supporters, members, donors and volunteers for their continued support and hard work for the Society. And we do that in the usual way. As demand for our services continue to increase, when the ability to generate income is the lowest it's ever been, the leadership team must remain on top of its game to steer us through these difficult times. At pages 10 and 11, we talk about guidance, advice and actions in response to coronavirus and vaccination from our highly commended website. We address COVID-19 and vaccine rollout through a series of 6 webinars involving patients and medical professionals. All of the recordings are available on our website. But COVID also affects the ways that companies have to work. However, we have been hybrid working since summer 2020. This is where staff are working part from the office and part from home. reflective of the needs of the individual staff members and the society. This affords safer and efficient business practices where many meetings in this day and age, just like this, are conducted virtually. At the Society, we will seek to balance productivity with the well-being of all of our staff always. Over the last year, covered through pages 8 to 20, you will see that we have continued to experience global uncertainty and turbulence, leading to funding constraints at the same time as increased workload from increased demand for our services. However, we have continued to meet the high standards that the sickle cell community.
Right. Yes, surgeon's very good at it, but I think there's a lot of drivers now.
That might be helpful. We hope that this report shows you the range of work that has been done to continue to see visible improvements and impacts for people living with sickle cell and their families. So let me take you through a few highlights. We had 1,700 helpline inquiries, and these are discussed at page 9. We continued to hold information and awareness events from black blood and stem cell donors to Africanus Horton and the discovery of sickle cell in 1874, as well as all sorts of work with global advocacy, as discussed at page 10. The Society continued its provision of the NHS National Sickle Cell and Thalassemia Screening Programme for England, as detailed at page 11. This gives great credit to our programme lead, Yamidi Thomas. We continued working with the Sickle Cell World Assessment Survey, the largest sickle cell survey ever conducted in the world, covering more than 16 countries. You can see that at page 11. We published a parent's guide to managing sickle cell, and that's at page 11. Also at page 11, you can see our work to constantly develop health literacy. This year, we released Sickle Cell Disorder in Childhood, Standards and Guidelines for Clinical Care. These add to the adult care standards launched in Parliament in 2019. And these provide vital attachments to our clinicians and to our doctors and healthcare workers, and of course to our patients, their families and their carers. Next, we facilitated continuous knowledge development and encouraged our support groups and their members to take up the Society's offer of free membership. And as a further part of our strategy, the Society recruits and develops good sickle cell disorder ambassadors. Next, as mentioned earlier, the development of up-to-date sickle cell specific advice and guidance on coronavirus and vaccine. And you can see this on dedicated pages on the Society's website. We succeeded in getting sickle cell disorder on the Department of Health and Social Care list of clinically extremely vulnerable people that need to be shielded. We ran our successful annual children's holiday virtually. The children's holiday, one of the favourite activities in the year at the Society. We engaged with children aged 4 to 17 years of age and their families. The event was set up and prepared to mitigate against digital exclusion, even providing laptops when needed. Page 12, you can see details of the wonderful feedback from the children's activities. The children's holiday is now 33 years old and still bringing knowledge, joy, laughter, and much love to the successive generations of children living with sickle cell, delivering confidence to them and their families for their lives ahead. We had 34 children last year, and this year we had 59 children, along with 58 of their siblings, as well as mums and dads. We worked to develop the first NHS Training and Education and Medical Professional e-module for sickle cell, working with the Nursing and Midwifery Education Steering Group. You can see that at page 13. We published Cast Aside and Forgotten, an all-party parliamentary group for sickle cell and thalassemia report into the impact of COVID-19 as a pandemic on the sickle cell community. You can see that at page 13. And we continued the growth of our blood donation project, South London Gives, recruiting Black heritage blood donors to provide the best ethnically matched blood for our sickle cell patients. South London Gives at page 15 was so successful, it went national. Give blood, spread love. I love that title. It's a great name for a service. Give blood, spread love. And you can see that at page 16. To anybody that wants to give blood, just contact them. And you can do this via our website. Blood donation is really, really important. We launched the Our Journey, Our Story, the first ever sickle cell exhibition at the Black Cultural Archive in Brixton. You can see that at page 17. So you see, the Society has continued to be a leading public voice and public source of information on sickle cell at national and international levels. In this Olympic year, some would say a gold medal is due for the Society punching well above its weight with its small staff team. At page 19, we discussed future plans. Looking forward, we know that we have Black Lives Matters, COVID, Brexit, climate change, and in direct relation to the NHS, there will be healthcare reforms. These will take the form of ICSs, and these are integrated care systems, delivering localised commissioning arrangements. ICSs have 4 main objectives, but their main purpose can be summarised as to narrow health inequalities. The cause of the causes of inequality and disparity is race. The NHS agree and formed the Race and Health Observatory. The Society must see these as opportunities, form strategic relationships that encourage leadership, accountability and exposure to performance outcomes. We want to end suboptimal care, removal of barriers to access of treatments, and we want to improve patient experiences. Though objectives appear well aligned, diverse representation will be needed on our ICS governance bodies. Looking forward, we have current unstable financial markets, social care changes, NHS waiting list catch up. The writing is on the wall and it's quite clear. These things combined mean there will be medium and long-term challenge. We will need to show resilience to weather these changes whilst continuing to create value for our patients. Nevertheless, we remain committed at the Society to continuing the positive work we do for the sickle cell community. And we do this with good grace, governance, transparency, and accountability. As a society, we reach out to our support groups listed on our website and encourage them to engage with their local ICSs, spreading awareness and making change. Now, if I could take slide 6, please. Now we are going to look in more detail at the financial year, April 2020 to March 21. It is my pleasure to ask our President, Michael Parker, CBE, to tell you about the Treasurer's Report. Starting from page 20 of the Trustee Report, he will cover our auditors and audited accounts. I would like to give credit to our Finance Manager, our Vice Chair and Treasurer, and our Chief Executive for preparing these management accounts. And now, over to you, Michael, and may I personally thank you for standing in for our Treasurer today. So let's welcome Michael Parker, CBE, in the usual way.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Mark's going to do the pages for me. This Treasurer's Report is really for Michelle, so I'm not going to take credit for the things that when she says we have done. I am just standing in trying to mouth her words. But really, as you've already heard from Kye, we've had an incredible year in that we've increased our income beyond our expectation and reduced our expenses. And it has meant some personal loss to the organisation, but we've converted it into a year of planned deficit to a year of success and surplus. So I would like to commend everybody that's contributed. And I'd also like to welcome, because it's their first year, Penelcare Fosters, who is the PKF, who is the new auditors for the year. And I believe we have them in the wings waiting to help out when I trip and stumble. Well, the Treasury Report is just, again, echoing that how all of these achievements that we've delivered has been done with a financial surplus. If I can ask Mark to go to the next page, I'm going to whiz through these reports, right, and then go through the headings. Now, the statement of financial policies are the policies we use, hopefully in a consistent manner, to enable us to produce and report accurate figures. So we have an investment policy which tells us how we guide ourselves to make the minor investments that we do, but they are important. We also put things, reserves policy means that we put things aside, like squirrels, nuts are saved for a rainy day and see us through the hard times. The risk management enable us to explain to you that we do actually record the risk and take up a strategy of whether we tolerate the risk, treat the risk with some strategy. We may be able to even transfer the risk, like take out some insurance by transferring the financial impact. We will do various things in our power to actually prove that we are trying to prevent a catastrophe from happening before it happens. Go forward. Financial review is something that we've already gone through. We've had an amazing time in an incredibly hard period, which we already know about COVID. But instead of like some of the big boys in the charitable world going down and emerging to survive, we have actually come out stronger with a surplus. If we could move forward. And now when we talk about those financial statements, we're going to go through it in a bit more detail as we go through. So essentially, we have what we call three primary statements that we will be going through. If we scroll down a bit more, one of it is about income and expenditures. We talk about fundraising strategy, how they've been good to get extra grants in, greater than expected. And we talk about the expenditure, and we've cut our expenses, and that's how you create your surpluses. You make sure your income is greater than your expenses. There is a part about, I'm going through three statements. There is something else about what we owe and what we are owed, and that's our balance sheet. And then there's how we manage our cash. Those are the three primary statements. But one of the other things which is not appreciated is the board work with management on applying the Charity Governance Code, which is how we make decisions and act upon them. And we have done that in, I think, an exemplary manner for at least 20 years, because I've known the sickle cell when it's gone through some hardships, and I can safely say we have a strong team and moving forward in a very strong way. Can I ask us to move forward a bit? Right, then we've got trustees' responsibilities. Now, it is the responsibilities of the board, which are the trustees, to make sure that we prepare the accounts and we make the judgments about what should be in there, because sometimes if I say we spend, let's say £10, you know you spent £10. But if he says the value of an asset's gone down, it's less difficult to say, well, how much has that value gone down because it's got a bit older, right? We make judgments about these estimates and put them through the accounts. We also follow, as an accountant, certain standards for which are agreed by all accountants and with the government. And then we also make sure that we do so in a prudent fashion. And we make sure that we work on the basis that we can survive another year going forward. That is our presumption. We present that to the auditors, and they then seek to verify whether the trustees were accurate, were honest, open and transparent, and that's how we get the statements. If you can scroll up a bit. Right, thank you. The provision of information, as I said, we make the activities, we record them, and then we provide that information to the auditors, and then the auditors tell us if they believe us. If we continue, and that, although it's a statement by, as you can see, by the chair, but it's for and on behalf of the board. Right. This is the independent auditor's report, which is written by the auditors, and it's independently done, and they turn around and tell us, yes, we know the standards, we agree that you have complied with the standards, and when we check it out, that the accounts give a true and fair view of what's been taking place, and they agree with the general accepted accounting practice that all accountants should be working towards, and it agrees with the requirements of the Companies Act. So because we are both a charity and a company, we must comply with what the charities do and the disclosures and reporting requirements of a company. And they tell you that they've had a look at this, they've made a judgment, they've given their basis of their opinion, and the conclusions are that we are a going concern, everything's okay, essentially, and therefore that the report is accurate and gives a true and fair view. If you can scroll, keep scrolling. Thank you. That is in accordance with the Companies Act. There are matters required to report, and that they are stated down there, and that they are explained that the responsibilities of the trustees, which is in the statement above. So we are in agreement. Now we can get down. Now we set the scene, if you can scroll down, for the main event, which is we've got the auditor's responsibilities. Yeah, we can keep going, scrolling. Right, because it's in detail if anybody wants to know, but the auditors are there. As I say, PKF is Panel Kerr Fosters, Little John, they merged together, big city firms, and LLP means limited liability practice. But that's only to state that this statement of financial activities, which is our income and expenditure account, if you keep scrolling, right, this is our income and our activities for the year. Now, what you really need to look at, because although it's split in, if you look at the descriptions on the left-hand side, the first two column of figures are what we call unrestricted funds and restricted funds. The unrestricted funds mean the board can allocate the money any way it feels, as long as it works towards the objective. The restricted funds means that the donors have said that only certain amounts of activity can take place with the money they've given them. So they can only be spent on certain things. and there's details about the breakup of the restricted and unrestricted, well, the restricted funds, because they're made up of lots of different funds later on in the notes, but I won't be going through those unless anybody wants to find out about them, but they all cross-reference to this number. And then together you get the total funds, and we have the comparative in the last column, which is 2020's numbers, and you've got 2021's number. So you've got the income, which has basically moved up from 753,000 to 789,000 throughout the year, right? Little, as you can see, a little amount is investment income. Most of it is voluntary income, which is why we have to give thanks for our fundraisers and the people who have donated to make those numbers grow. Then the next line down, we have cost of funds, right? And that's the fundraising cost. And then we have charitable activities, campaigning, and this is not to raise money, but to lead on the issues for sickle cell. And we've got direct service group activities, we've got provision for information and advisory, and we've got the children activities. So that sums up the big core expenditures of what the Sickle Cell Society has been doing through the year. And then you set the income against the expenditure. You can see that we have got about 78,000 last year, and it's 184,000 surplus this year. So we've been doing very well. If you can scroll up, we then add the funds from last year to this year to see how much we're going forward. And so we're going forward with over £500,000 of funds when we only had nearly £1/3 last year. If we can keep going. Right. Now, this is the balance sheet. This is where we show what we have. That's the asset side. And then we start talking about what we owe, and it's and we subtract what we owe to other people, which is the liabilities or creditors, to and then we get what the surplus, which is the Sickle Cell Society. And we've got tangible assets, which are things, tangible means you can touch them. A lease, for example, or some rights you can't touch. But tangible assets, which is explained in note 9, is mainly equipment and computers. It's the stuff you see when you get into the office. We haven't got any stocks there, but we have got some people that owes us money for stuff we've done or services we've provided under contract, and we've got some money in the bank. And as you can see, that's swollen. The big number there is gone from 455,000 to 630,000. So we're doing quite well, and that helps us survive immediate downturns. And then from those current assets, which is the stuff that we have, we owe 122,000 to other people, right? Normally we're getting some stuff on credit and things like that. When you set the two off, you get the net current assets. So that's the amount of assets current assets we own, stocks, debtors and cash, subtract the creditors, and we get £541,000 compared to 357 last year. We add that to the tangible fixed assets, so we get net current asset with a fixed asset, and we get total assets less current liabilities, which is over £500,000 against the 1/3 And then, as you can see, it's represented by either unrestricted funds, which was 336,000, or restricted funds, which is 217. And that's how we get our total value. If we go down, we'll go through this is the second primary statement, and that will be signed off by Michelle and Kye. If we can go down to the third, this is a statement of cash flows, right? Now, cash flows is just another way of doing your, record of what you spent your money on and what money you received. And you can see from that, most of the money is from our activities as the trust, but we've got some investment income, which is not the primary activity of the Sickle Cell Society, because we're not an investment bank. And then we paid and bought some fixed assets, which we need to do to keep the staff armed to do the activities they need to do. And when we add the activities from these expenditures, we get net cash from investing activities of minus 4,397. The numbers in brackets are minus numbers, the ones outside brackets are not. And I just realized that we should have moved the cash figure in the top line for operating activities into the second column, as it is with the comparisons. Forgive me for not bringing that up earlier. So you get the increase, you add it on to the 180,000, and that's how you get the 175,000. So forgive me for that presentation clip. And then you get your cash equivalents from the beginning of last year. You add your cash you made this year to what you made last year, and you get your balance of 630,000, right? That's how you reconcile the primary statements. So we've got an idea how you had the operating activities. We have an idea of what we owe and own, and then you have an idea of how we actually spent the cash. All of the other pages below are all about the notes to the account. So we have some policy statements about how we actually calculated these figures, right? These are the accounting policies, basis of preparation. We talked about a going concern, that we work on the presumption that we can pay our debts as they fall due within the next 12 months. We talk about the stock, but there's none at the end of the year. We talk about the income, right? We might as well go through the policies. Then we talk about deferred income. That means sometimes the income comes in later than expected. We talked about the policies when I talked about how the assets fall in value. We've just assumed that they've fallen in value at 20% straight line. That means every year we take the cost of the asset, divide it by 4, and spread the cost over those 4 years. Because, you know, if it's a car, you can't say what the car is going to be worth every year. You just use these sorts of policies to give us an idea. You've recognized the account, the expenditure there based upon VAT rules. We've got operating leases that should be spread over the years. Again, we like these assets with these operating leases. We do not know how they depreciate, so we made an estimate there. We've got some pension costs that we made an estimate, and the policies are there. It's defined contribution as opposed to defined benefit. We've got the unrestricted funds there, which we talked about, which is under the management of the trustees. Keep going. And the restricted funds are under the definition of the donors. And then we get into accounting estimates, which I don't think many people want to know about. But, you know, it's sometimes we have to make judgments about the figures that are here. And the auditors agree that, you know, the policy, the means by which we do so is reasonable. We've defined our status, which is as a company and a charity, and we've got our company number there in case anybody wants to look it up at Companies House. The detailed of the voluntary income is there. The investment income is there. And now we go into the details of the accounts. Now, I am going to say, because some people will see this as paint drying on the wall, that there's a lot of details which we don't need to go through. And I'm happy to go through them if people want. I think this is a good time to take a break and see if anybody would like to know more about the accounts. I'll give people time to unmute.
I think we're fine, Michael, if you carry on through. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, right, then let me just skip through. Investment income, we've seen that it's from COIV. That's just a body that keeps, I think, ethical investments and gives interest on it. Money's gone down for the unrestricted funds, but that's, I think, because the economies have gone down, and so our returns are pretty low. but I think we can live with that for now. You want to keep going? So, yeah, right. Now we've got a breakdown of the expenditure that was said into direct costs, staff costs, and support costs. So we've just broken down what was in the primary statement so that people can see exactly what it's made up of. Because as you can see, the campaigning takes a lot of people costs, whereas the fundraising may be more advertising, so it's a more direct cost. So we just, and support costs are more of the administrative support, which is reallocated across the expenses. And when you add the three up, you get to the total cost, right? So that's that. If we can scroll up a little, the charitable activities, right, again, is broken down into other support costs, office and IT costs, staff-related costs, and the governance costs. So when the boards do something, those, what the board do and the expenses they incur are now generally put in there and reallocated across. So you can see the split of the expenses. So if we can keep going. Right, staff numbers and a split between the cost of wages, salaries, social securities, which is normally national employers, national insurance. The employees element goes into adding to the net tax, employees' contribution to pensions and employees' contribution to national insurance are all included in the gross cost, which is the wages and salary. But the employers make an addition to it, and that's added, and then the employer's contribution to pension is added to that, and that's what the figures make up. And as you can see, because we did cut some salaries, that cost has gone slightly down, right? Average number of employees has gone down by 2 because it was 14 last year, it's 12 this year, right? And nobody earned more than 60,000. So, because we need to disclose that just in case we want to know how the level of expenditure is. Yeah. Now, what we asked in note 7 is to highlight these types of expenditure. How much of it is on depreciation on owned assets rather than leased assets? How much do we pay our auditors? Slight increase in audit fees, and how much we pay in equipment rental. We need to disclose that separately because it's not, because there is sometimes there's a concern that we may be colluding with our auditors, and that's why you want to know how much they're getting for the service they're providing. So the first 2021 for the auditors fee is PKF, and then it was KPMG, I believe, the previous year. Now the tax is there, and although it's clear, what people do not understand is even charities pay tax, right? We haven't got a charge, but if you are, say, wayward in where you deal with charities, you could be hitting some tax. But no tax arose during the year. But if it does happen, then you can have a go, because I would have thought we would have breached the tax regulations, or the board would have breached the tax regulations there. If we can keep going forward. Right, tangible fixed assets. This is how we break down the stuff that we owe at the top of the balance sheet. And it's got the cost, anything we bought during the year, which are additions. If there were any disposed, but there was none this year. And so we have our costs at the end of the year. Then we add our depreciation for beginning of the charge, and we get our accumulated depreciation at the end of the year. And then you subtract the accumulated cost from the accumulated depreciation to get net book value. So if you take the two top figures of the cost and the top figure of the depreciation, you get last year's net book value, which was 13,000. It's not moved very much. That's because we've maintained our assets rather than expanding upon them. If we can go through debtors. Debtors are people that owe us money, and most of it's from grants and donations that have been promised we haven't actually got yet. Prepayments is when we start paying our expenses in advance. Sometimes you have to pay, let's say, your standing charge on your electricity in advance, or your telephone line in advance, and that's what prepayments are. Grants receivable is monies that people have promised us, like Public Health England, and they've not yet been received, but probably have been received after year end. Can we go forward? Yep. Okay. Right. Cash and equivalents. This is breaking down the cash. When we say cash and cash equivalents, it's cash in hand plus the money, as you can see, in NatWest reserve account, plus the money in the current account. We try to keep that as low as possible. QOIF, which is that deposit account that generated the interest that we talked about, and then PayPal, which I think some of you who are more computer literate know that's another form of payment where PayPal will make payments for us and we pay them. They guarantee hold it until the goods and services are delivered. Creditors are people that we owe money to, and it's normally trade, light, heat, any general expenditure for suppliers. And then sometimes we know we owe some people money for expenses, and these are accruals, and the income is deferred, and that we've got those put down as 36,000. So we've got greater management of them from 48,000. Deferred income reconciliation, it tells you amounts released from income, amounts deferred in the year. So it's just how we've been managing, keeping our income reconciled throughout the year. Keep going. Right, analysis of charitable funds. Remember, I told you that we have restricted and unrestricted. Now, the restricted funds are broken down into these separate charities, which are named on the left. I'm not going to read them all out. I think you can see. But altogether, they make up the balance, which is the restricted funds. So we've got a lot of things with different charities, local authorities, and various other groups that we engage with. And that's what makes up very restricted use of our funds, because they are only interested in certain aspects of what we do. Okay, and the unrestricted funds are just a general fund, which means that the trustees can do whatever they like with the funds. However, sometimes they designate that they want to do something specific, and they have something which is like a restricted funds, but instead of the donors making restrictions on it, it's the trustees who make restrictions on it, and therefore they're free to break those restrictions if they so do wish. Can we go down? Right. Right. The analysis of the charitable funds, we've got them into income, expenditure, and transfer. What I didn't go through, you'll find that some of the restricted funds are not actually economically viable. And Children's Holiday Scheme, for example, it raises 5,000, but it spends 21,000. Therefore, we take 16,000 out of the general fund to keep the scheme balanced. So we go through that process, and that's what the transfers are all about, where we think, well, we have to deliver the service, but if they've got enough funds, is okay, we carry the funds forward. If we don't, then normally the general fund steps in to bail out the restricted funds. You can never do the opposite. No restricted funds can bail out the general fund. That's law. If we can go forward. Right. And that analysis of charitable funds, you've got a description of what the restricted funds do. And again, I'll leave you to read all of these, if we can scroll down, right? But that's the basis of the restriction. And they've highlighted them there. Keep going. Right. Unrestricted donation legacies. It's giving you detailed analysis of the monies we over £500. And this is really an acknowledgement to the generosity that people have made. Right, so keep going. Can we scroll down? Right, the analysis between funds. Now, what we said is for the balance sheet, the tangible assets, current liabilities, which are the creditors, are there, right? And that now we've split the assets according to a fund, because you have to look at these restricted funds as though they have their own balance sheet and their own income and expenditure, and it's more like a group set of accounts. So this is what this is saying. Who owns what? Well, most of the assets are owned by, all of the assets are owned by the general fund for the tangible fixed assets, but some of the current assets, and normally it's the cash, is split between unrestricted and restricted. We have the prior year figure below, if you can go down, right? That's the transfers between funds, and it's really detailing what was said below. Yeah, okay. Right, leasing commitments, that, you know, we've got some stuff which is 2 to 5 years, and we always tell you what's about to hit the accounts next year, right? Reconciliation of operating results, we've just broken down what's been happening. It used to be done, you could do it with the cash flow, but you know, this is just a detail of that. Analysis of cash equivalent, which we've explained in the primary statement, the third primary statement, in more detail. Related party transaction, this is important because there may be, for example, transactions between my wife and myself, and I'm an employee, and that, or a trustee, and that wouldn't be proper. So we make a disclosure. Right, now, I think we've got most of the activities dealt with when it comes to all of the major activities of the organisation. Now, I've gone into a lot of detail. We've gone into all of the notes and what they mean, and I'm again saying happy to go through any detail questions if required.
That's fantastic, Michael. And Gloria Ogumbadejo said, bravo. So that's in the chat. Now, I'd like to thank you, Michael. The finances are often fireworks or bombs. And we had a very good financial picture of the health of the society in 2021. And you gave a great grounding on both the accounts, the language, and a comprehensive view of what the numbers mean. So I'm sure our audience are pleased at the detail. Certainly, you clarified the financial effort, the sheer effort that is required for the Sickle Cell Society to keep the show on the road. Yeah. I would now like to reintroduce our panel members. We have John James OBE, the Society's Chief Executive, the return of Michael Parker, CBE, the Society's President, and myself, Kye Gbangbola, Chair of the Society. Our virtual format today enabled our audience to pre-submit questions about our annual report and the Society's performance. So you can also ask questions in the chat, as LB did at 11:14, very quick off the mark. I've seen John has made a response to that. So all I say is right now, relax, get your fingers tapping, tap out those questions, put them in the chat as we provide responses for this period of the Q&A of our AGM, and we'll answer as many questions as we're able. Now, one of the first questions that came in was, and then it leads neatly into the question that I know John would like to answer, and our panel may have furthers. in terms of the answer I provide is, how would you like to see healthcare services change to reflect the concerns that you expressed about health inequalities and Black Lives Matter's post George Floyd? Well, for me, there needs to, just a general view, is that there needs to be root and branch health policy review, deracializing the inequalities in health policy. So, and also ensuring there's better representation of BME people in the NHS and also on the ICSs and their decision-making bodies. And there should also be education that is provided for the leaders of these organisations in terms of cultural training. And we should also involve patients so that patients have a real voice. Now, much of what I'm describing requires a degree of independent oversight by people with teeth. So there needs to be resources that enforce, resources that monitor. So we have the Race and Health Observatory, and perhaps they could bring cases, and those cases will help change the laws and support laws. So it is a case of carrot and stick. And also we need to remove some of the stigma that such organisations can provide to our patients. So I'm now going to take a look at that question that was asked earlier, and it was by LB, and in the welcome, so I'll leave that one to you, John. I don't know if you had anything further or better, because it was a while away when I mentioned the question.
Sure.
How would you like to see healthcare services change to reflect the concerns that the chair expressed about health inequalities and Black Lives Matters post George Floyd?
Kye, I'm actually going to answer LB's question, so rather than yours, but the question for everybody who may not have seen Liz's question is, how does the Sickle Cell Society advocate for change at a policy level, something that Kye referred to in his introduction? So the answer to the question raised by Liz is best illustrated by giving probably 3 examples of how we work with policymakers and the impact of that work. And these are not in any order of priority, one of which has been mentioned by the chair previously. But the very fact that during or before the COVID-19 pandemic, it was the Society who was working with the Department of Health and Social Care and also NHS England to ensure that people who lived with sickle cell were actually included in the shielding category. That wasn't automatic. It didn't happen because some great civil servant at the centre said, oh, we must put people with sickle cell in. There was discussion to ensure that people, so that's an example of advocating to ensure that people with sickle cell are not left out of the shielding list, because some of you will know that there were conditions that were left out of the shielding list. So that's first example. The second example is adult transplantation for sickle cell. Now, most of you on this call will know that the NHS have long funded paediatric bone marrow transplants, but if you happen to be 18 or an adult, you can't get the NHS to fund any bone marrow transplant. Sickle Cell Society has worked again with the Department of Health and Social Care and NHS England, and there is now a policy to fund adult transplantation, which didn't exist before. It will probably be run as a clinical trial to assess the effectiveness of it, but you know, that is work that we've been advocating, and it goes back to an expose we did with Channel 4 with one of our members, Addy, who everything failed for him, and he was an adult, but he had to fund his bone marrow transplantation privately. So that is changed, and that is another example. And the final example is we've been campaigning with the National Institute of Clinical Excellence and NHS England for years about the inadequacy of just having hydroxyurea as the only approved treatment for sickle cell. I'm pleased to say that we're working with the National Institute of Clinical Excellence and have been for years, and we're on the cusp. It's not there yet, but we're on the cusp of potentially them and NHS England agreeing new disease-modifying treatments for sickle cell. So those are three real examples. They're not, you know, real examples of where we have advocated with senior policy makers to get change, and real change, which should improve the lives of people who live with sickle cell. So that's the answer to Liz's question. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that, John. And I've got a question from GN, and it says, thank you for the presentation, referring to everything, including the Treasury report. A quick question, please. Interest received of £315 on a deposit of 150k seems very tiny. Are there any other alternative secure investments that can be used for better returns?
Yes, before I go on that, can I go back to the last question as well? Right, I think both of you are right, because I think John talked about how we can influence government and policy, and you talked about the wider aspects of an accountability for doing their services. We must remember that there is an Equalities Act, which means most of what you said, Kye, is a statutory responsibility for which sometimes the leadership of the NHS forgets about, and nobody holds them to account. We should be also holding them to account for their delivery to make sure that when they provide services, it is not discriminatory, and they have a statutory responsibility to be proactive in making sure that there is no discrimination of service provision. And therefore, where there is a need, it should be made. And therefore, we should try and hold them to account as well as influence them the way that John is talking about. And I think that's what we have been doing. But we do know that when there is a pressure, people forget some of their responsibilities. And if they're not held to account, the expenditure will fall away. So I just wanted to bring that to account, because most of the members will know what happens in sickle cell to the sickle cell community ebbs and flows. It is not an always continuous upward movement. So we have to continuously do our advocacy. Members have to campaign. And this is like painting the fourth bridge. When you think you've got it right and everybody's doing everything right, you'll find out somewhere in the cities, they've fallen behind the countryside, and we have to go from countryside to cities, and it just is never ending. And I think anybody who is has sickle cell or cares for anybody with sickle cell have seen this happen, I'm sad to say, far too often. But coming back to the investment rate, as the economy goes down, the interest rates fall. And remember, this is last year, ending March, so it's always lagged. We probably could get better interest rates, but there are certain places where, as an ethical investor, we may want to say, we don't want to go there. You know, if we said you can get good returns selling Kalashnikovs to the Mujahideen, I don't think we would necessarily go into that investment. So this is a charitable organisation that does an ethical investment and gives a reasonable return. I think sometimes, despite the roughness, we should accept that that is the case for the amount of, we don't want to incur investment costs looking for greater returns. But I think it's a reasonable one for now, but I think we can review it next year. Okay.
Fantastic. And I'm just seeing we've got quite a few complementary points. So we had one from NA. Thank you very much, Michael, for going through the Treasurer's report so meticulously. A not very easy subject, but you certainly made it easy for me to understand. And Winnie has just made clear that she's raising money for the society, which will all go into our accounts for following years. And she's placed down the Big Jazz gig on October the 22nd, Millfield Theatre. And I'm just having a further look to see if there's financial questions pipe through, if you can see any yourselves. Otherwise, I'll have a look at various other questions. So there's a question here. It's not a financial one, but I'm sure our panel would like to pick it up. And it's from TA. And it says, in my lifetime, will we ever have free prescriptions for sickle cell medication?
I'm happy to start, and I know Shehi is on the call, so she might want to add anything. And Shehi is one of our staff who works with the prescription alliance. So the first answer, and this is my honest answer, we are doing everything we can through petitions we run on our website and other work to get sickle cell as available for free prescriptions. And so we continue to work on that. My honest answer at the moment is the Treasury. This is Rishi Sunak's department, has closed the door very firmly because they're just about to do a spending review. And the bottom line, to be honest, is government hasn't got any money. They're in a huge deficit. So the honest answer, it is difficult to prise open the Treasury door given the circumstances of the spending review, the government coffers. That isn't going to stop us from doing what we're doing, and it may be longer. And I certainly hope that it will be in your lifetime that we will get free prescriptions for sickle cell. But as I think both the chair and Michael said, these things don't happen by a click of the finger. They require persistence and doggedness, and those are things that we have in our locker, and we'll keep doing it. So there'll be a point where and this is, you know, a political point, but, you know, you also, as our members and individual, need to write your MPs and use that route. Write your MPs. Shehi is providing a standard template letter if you would like, so you don't have to do all the hard work, but write your MPs. Keep it on the agenda. So in addition to the work that we do, having individual patients write into their MPs about it, because don't forget there'll be an election in probably 3 years' time. And then there'll be lots of activity with MPs wanting to, you know, get your vote. So write to them, and Shehi will be able to give you a template letter, but we all collectively, not just the Sickle Cell Society, we all as individuals and as an organisation need to keep it on the agenda. So that's my honest answer to that question. And Matthew's just put up the petition. I think it was Matthew put up the petition. So that's in the chat as well. So thank you. Long answer, but a heartfelt answer.
Could I just add to that?
Yes,
right,
Michael, thank you.
The other thing I would like us to say is to link it in with the bone marrow transplantation. If they want the demand for free prescriptions to go down, offer more transplantation, therefore there's less crisis and less expenditure. So try to encourage them to understand, and maybe we need to help people articulate the case. They can save money by investing it in sickle cell bone marrow transplantation. They save money on expenditure going forward. So the need for the free prescription goes away the quicker they can give more people bone marrow transplantation.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I have nothing to add on that. All of the comments regarding the AGM are complimentary, but there are questions clearly being asked about the experience of people. I'll take probably the last couple, and this one's an interesting one from L. And L says, when it comes to sickle cell, most of my bad experiences happen at A&E. But most doctors can confirm that A&E staff are actually very well versed in sickle cell. Is there a way for sickle cell patients to be included in training days for A&E medical staff? Great question. Who would like to kick that off? Michael, John?
I'll happily kick it off. I mean, we know prior to the sickle cell inquiry that we have recently completed over the summer under the leadership of the APPG chair, Pat McFadden, we know, and we knew before that, but we had expert evidence saying that the worst experience for most patients is A&E, and I have to say that it isn't universal that all A&E departments are well versed in sickle cell. So let me tell you that now. There will be many who are well versed in sickle cell, but equally there are many who are not well versed in sickle cell. So I don't want people to have the impression that even though there are problems in A&E, they know about sickle cell. So the answer to your question is simple. We will be doing some work on policy with NHS England about A&E and the deficiencies, because that's what they are, deficiencies in the setup. And those deficiencies have been highlighted in many cases, and that includes not just A&E staff, but I know Betty Smith was on the AGM today, but you know, the sad and preventable death of her son was about education, training, and communication between clinical staff and the haematology teams. So we have always done as a society use our patient members to train clinicians. So I can assure you of that. So that was the behind your question. I know I've added to it, but yes, we do use our members as people who take part in training. We've done it in London and outside of London, but it reflects the fact that there should be a more systematic way of doing it across all A&E departments and trusts, and not just those who have an interest in it. But the answer to the question is yes, we have done that, and we will continue to do that.
Right. Could I also ask that we try and encourage the training to go a little bit earlier, so that we target medical schools and the it's not Royal College, the emergency medicine faculty that's developing. So as soon as they become experts or look to become even doctors that express an interest in that field, that we try and get them early, because they.
I think we'll do that, Michael. We will do that because what many people who took part, and I know many people on the call today were part of the Health Select type inquiry that we had. Where we are at the moment, just so everybody is aware, we're in the process of preparing the report and recommendations from what we heard from patients and clinicians, and we hope to be launching that report in early October, and that report will be, Michael, making recommendations to bodies about what they should be doing in the light of the testimony that we had from Betty and Charles Smith, individual other patients from across the country. So this wasn't London, this was across the country. So we will be doing that. And it's also worth saying that since we initiated that work, the Care Quality Commission have also piggybacked on that work. Piggyback is my word, on that work, and of undertaking their own inspection of North Middlesex Hospital, and we are working with them, and I know Betty and other patients are working with them as well. So we've got that in hand to make those recommendations. The challenge will be how receptive government will be, or these, quangos will be to some of the recommendations we make.
Thank you very much. Now, as we can see in the questions, and I thank the trustees for their input, and Matthew, thank you very much for putting in certain links. And the questions are showing a huge degree of passion for various things. And there's a lovely long, I suppose, comment from somebody who's a guest, number 8. And it starts with saying that I volunteered to work with blood donation team since 2018 and 19 AGM, and up till now I've heard nothing from them. I've been speaking to people everywhere about blood donations, and it continues on. Now, I would suggest that perhaps that particular guest contacts the Sickle Cell Society's helpline. And
can I just say, not the helpline, I think Tracy's on the call. I'm sorry if that's the case for that person, but Tracy's on the call. Tracy, can you hear me? Is there anything you want to say? Because it should be Tracy that I can't see the question, but if I know the person's name, we can ask Tracy or Olivia to make contact with them.
Yes, please get in contact with us. I haven't read the whole message. If you have the details, I'll definitely get in contact with the person. If it's us that they're in contact with us, I can only apologise if they're not aware. But if you add all the details, then I can get in touch with you. I'll put my email address in the chat box.
No, they're very kind and complimentary, and they say that they do understand that the society is very busy. The person's only identified as a number, John. And then I was going to add...
Got a name. She's given their name. Isn't that Olivia?
No, Olivia's one of our staff.
Oh, sorry.
It could be. It could still be Olivia. There's more than one Olivia. When I mentioned Olivia, it's one of our staff. But I think the next step is if Tracy.
Yeah, it does say.
That's me, Olivia.
Okay.
Hi, it's me, Olivia. My name is Olivia.
Yes, thank you, Olivia.
Hi, it's me.
Are you happy with the answer that you've received?
It's regarding the blood donations that no one has been in contact with me. My name is Olivia Waitray, and I've posted my contact number on the screen. I've called the society on several occasions to remind them to please get in touch. And the ladies in the office can attest to this. I've spoken to them on several occasions, but up till now, no one has contacted me. I've tried my best. And I did speak to some patient transport workers at my hospital on about 2 days ago, and they were very interested. But the thing is, I speak to people everywhere I go, but no one to capture them, no one to take their details, no one to follow them up. I don't know. All I do is give them Sickle Cell Society's contact phone number. So I don't know what happens to them. There's no trace, there's no tracking. You know, they disappear into thin air, you know. And then the last patient transport workers I spoke to were extremely interested, and they've actually asked me to provide leaflets and things to them so that they can also help us give them out, you know, because I was able to convince them about how sickle cell affects the patients and everything. And they said they never thought of it that way. They never knew what sickle cell patients were going through, and that I really helped them to understand what sickle cell is about and how they can be of help to us. But on that day, he kept asking for leaflets and things so he could contact and also speak to some other people as well. But I just told him, sorry, call Sickle Cell Society.
But we've got limited time.
Okay.
I would like to thank you very, very much for that advocacy. You will be able to get in touch with Tracy Williams because Tracy's now got your number and she will be in touch with you. Now, we are out of time, but we've tried to respond to as many questions as possible. I would just like to comment, as a person that lives with sickle cell disorder, when I go into A&E, I experience the same issues as the question raiser. And of course, there is a nice guidelines for the time around which issues, especially acute pain relief, for what is a medical emergency, should be administered to our patients. And at the Sickle Cell Society, certainly during the last year, we've been working very hard with the NHS, and that was certainly a central part of the all-party parliamentary group Sickle Cell Inquiry. So if I could wrap up at that and continue on, because I don't want to make anybody late for lunch. I'd like to thank everybody for the questions that have been asked. And if you'd like to know more, of course, you know where our website is. It is www.sicklecellsociety.org. So I'd like to thank everybody yet again for the stimulating excellence of the questions asked. It's clear that we can meet again because there's always plenty of questions. I'm now going to move on to the close of our AGM. We're meant to close at 12:35 and it's now 12:36. So let's press on. If you could give me slide 8, please, Matthew. Okay, so we've just declared our AGM closed and it's time for the Emmanuel Amuta Award. This award is for a young person between the ages of 10 to 15 years old, in exchange for a piece of poetic excellence, as we can put it. The award was instituted in honour and in memory of a young man called Emmanuel Amuta, who lived with sickle cell, and he sadly passed away on the 19th of September 2017, aged only 14 years. Emmanuel was a confident, caring and gifted young man, and most cherished by the Sickle Cell Society. I had the honour of meeting Emmanuel and seeing him perform his poetry. There will be many that hold a special place for him in their heart, and I pray all the time, along with my prayers for my son, and remember Emmanuel in those peaceful moments. It is my great pleasure to introduce Yamidi Thomas, the Society's NHS engagement lead, who was also especially fond of Emmanuel. So over to you, Yamidi.
Thanks, Kye, for that, and even putting the correct emphasis on my name, the pronunciation of my name, from a true Nigerian. You've actually said half of what I was going to say about, Emmanuel being a handsome, caring, and that he performed at our 2016 AGM his poem called A Beautiful Cell. He liked poetry and rap, and one pertinent line in that poem was, to me, sickle cell is a gift. If you have it, you shouldn't be ashamed of it. And that, is him saying, remove the stigma of sickle cell. I'm happy to see that some of the poetry competition entrants are on the call today. So what I would say is that those children should at least have their poems nearby, so that when I announce the winner will be able to read out his or her poem. So yeah, so make sure you have your poems nearby, because one of you will be asked to read out your poem. I want to thank the two judges external judges who helped, Dr. Maria Bergs at De Montfort University, and we had a young person called Abigail, because we wanted a young perspective on the poems as well. So thanks to them. We had 11 entries. One entry didn't qualify because it was from an 8-year-old, but she wanted to write her poem, as her mother said. So possibly next year, we'll try and see, the Children's Activities officer will try and see whether we can have 2 age categories for the poetry, because, below age 10, people are still quite creative. Another entry we thought had to be in a category of its own, because to us, it classed more as creative writing, but it was so good that we decided that we will, give an award to this person. And that person is 13-year-old Maya Phillip. And what she did was she wrote a piece entitled Secondary and Sickle Cell, the Odd Mix, and talks about her fears, at an experience of starting secondary school and having sickle cell. So that was in a category in its own, really, but we will make sure that we promote it, because one of the judges actually thought, and I did as well, that piece could help educate other children who are starting secondary school and who have sickle cell, because of course the two from secondary to primary school is quite different. We received a good number of poems. It was difficult to choose 3. It's an unusual pandemic year yet again. So what we thought was that for the effort by everybody, we'll have the best 3, but at the same time, give a small token to the other children who did send in their poems, and will ensure that, all the poems with permission are on the newsletter and website. So without further ado, I'll announce the 3 winners. The first prize goes to Victoria Odubola, age 13, and she wrote a poem called Sickle Cell and Me. Interestingly, Victoria actually won a prize 3 years ago in 2017. She won second prize with a poem called My Happy Life. So she's obviously stepped up her game and has won this time 3 years later. We thought her poem was very good, so she gets the first prize. The second prize goes to somebody called Victor Ohaji, age 13, and his poem was A Part of Me. And third prize went to Akila Akimborode, and hers was Sickle Cell and Me. So there you have it. And just to show that we went through the poems, and we didn't think, oh, she's applied before or they've applied before. Children can apply anytime, and it's by merit. So I think Victoria is on. I saw that her name was on earlier, so I don't know if you can spotlight her to read her poem. Matthew, I'm not sure if that's possible. Is Victoria on?
Hello.
She was on earlier. Oh, yeah. So do you want to read out your poem so that we all hear your poem, please?
Okay. So, sickle cell and me, at war in sea, the sea of blood you see, you can help win the battle with me. Sickle cell and you, with pain on its side too, struggling to keep calm through, but there are allies that want to help you. Sickle cell and us, fighting with people we can trust. The pain is causing a fuss, but we can get through this, all of us. Sickle cell and me, we had a war at sea. We made it through the crisis, you see. Thanks for fighting the battle with me.
Okay, I'm going to clap for you. Others can do the clapping too, and we'll contact you next week, and we'll contact. Is it Victor as well who won? Who came second? Victor, do you just want to say something? We don't have time for you to read your poem, but if you're there, congratulations, Victor. You came second, and the third person was who was that? Akila. So we'll be contacting you, and as I said before, it's important to encourage young people. So we will try and give everybody a little gift voucher as well. Thanks, Kye.
Fantastic, and well done to our winner, and well done to Victor and Akila as our runners-up. So that is our Emmanuel Amuta Poetry Award, and fantastic poem it was. I'm now going to move into our vote of thanks, because we've now come to the end. But I don't want you to go away yet, because of course I'd like to thank all of those that spoke alongside me. I'd like to thank those that provided questions, and I can say in proper real time, responses came through, especially the one to Olivia, who I commend for doing a great job advocating and raising awareness. I'd like to thank any of our MPs for their ongoing support. Of course, I thank PFK Littlejohn for their constructive audit. So many thanks have been coming in, and I must raise this. So many thanks have been coming in the chat, and it's only polite to thank you for coming to this event. Special thanks, of course, to our staff and volunteers for their sterling work, and to our trustees for their sterling work. A further special thanks to our President, Michael Parker, CBE, for standing in for our treasurer on this occasion. A mega thanks to our donors, individuals, corporates, trusts, churches, schools, and foundations, without whom, quite literally, none of the society's work could be done. We give thanks to our life sciences researchers and our partner organisations. And of course, I thank all of you for attending, whether or not you provided questions. Thank you. And I hope you all have enjoyed this AGM. I end, not uncharacteristically, in a story of hope. In our search for a better future for our sickle cell warriors, the charity, the Donkey Sanctuary, appears to have cracked the strange alchemy that is needed to succeed. In 2019, their income was £43 million. I usually would say in the chat, have a guess. £43 million, 90% was donated by people like us, or perhaps there's greater intergenerational wealth in the people that give to the Donkey Sanctuary, but nevertheless, people like us. So let's try and give those donkeys a run for their money, because in caring hands, money can do much to change lives. So, ladies and gentlemen, though this was free of charge, it was not free of cost. May I remind everybody, we are a charity and we rely on donations to survive. On this, our final slide, you will see the links to make donations. Please feel free to pledge in the chat, or, because we're going to leave it open for 10 minutes, or give whenever you can. And I do indeed thank all of you for your generosity of time and gifts. I ask that you please renew your membership and keep promoting our work to help us to help those that are in need of our support. Today falls on a day when we stand in solidarity with all that fell, were injured and suffered loss at 9/11, when the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center 20 years ago. Some here will have first-hand accounts of seeing that day unfold. Some may have had family members involved as rescuers, clinicians, and those that have been lost, we say God's grace and please rest in peace. To those lost from COVID-19 and all people around the world lost from sickle cell, and I saw in the chat we had Malawi in, all people with sickle cell lost around the world, do rest in perfect peace. You will always be in our hearts. And from my panel, I'd ask you, do you have any final words before I say goodbye? So, Michael, do you have any final words? And John, do you have any final words?
No, just to extend my sincere thanks to everybody who has taken part today. Brilliant poems, and just to say thank you. You know, really positive spirit. Keep it up, and thank you to all of our staff, volunteers who make today and lots of other things happen smoothly. So that's all I wanted to add to what you said, Kye.
Thank you. And Michael, just in case you didn't know, you're on mute and you were saying things. Did you have any final reflections?
Yes, I just wanted to say thank you for the leadership and work that you have done, not just this year through COVID, but over the years to provide a stabilising force and strong leadership for us.
Well, thank you very much. And that's teamwork for you, everybody. So stay well, stay safe. Blessings to you all. Have a lovely Saturday afternoon and goodbye for another year.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Well done. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye from Malawi. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye from Malawi.
Bye, everyone. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Malawi,
you.
Bye, everybody.
Malawi, that's really good of you.
Yeah,
I don't know what time it is in
from
Malawi.
From Malawi. Lovely.
It's lovely to see you from Malawi.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure for everybody. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, children.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye, little ones. We tried to make this children friendly as well.
Yes.
Well done.